Okay, chess fans, today is another video going over one of our top games from a tournament from our Friday chess clubs. This one is for May the 7th, our PHCC May Quick I. Now, you may have noticed my last couple of videos may have looked different. That's because I'm on vacation. I'm not at home. I'm not with my normal background with my chess sets behind me and stuff. Right now I'm sitting out here in Tennessee. It's gorgeous up near the Smoky Mountains, and so if you hear some cars or things like that, that's what's going on. I'm outside actually right now, but even on vacation, I'm still thinking about my chess kids. So we're going to be looking at a game today between DanielPHCC and ArcherofChess. These two finished number 1 and number 2 in our May Quick I tournament. If you are looking for Grandmaster analysis of Grandmaster quality games, you are in the wrong place. But if you are looking for, decent amateur analysis of some amateur games that look kind of like games you might play, then this is where you want to be. So we're going to be looking at these two games. This was actually round 2 of the tournament. There were 4 rounds. And so this is one of the first videos we've done where we're not covering the last game of the tournament, but these two finished first and second, and they did face each other. And so we're going to be taking a look at this game. Starts out with e4, e5, followed by knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5. So this is called the Gyoko piano game. I know I butchered the pronunciation there, but if you are a piano player like me, you know that the word piano means quiet. It's typically considered a quiet game, which this is anything but a quiet game. Okay, so we've got knight c3, knight f6, and we've got the 4 knights variation. After 4 moves, we're perfectly symmetrical, and then we get a castle. Pretty typical here, and then d5 already right off the bat. This is an early mistake in the game. Now these kids, these are not, like I said, grandmaster kids, but they're decent, so we expect to see some good play. We expect to see some mistakes, and this is one of the things that you should always do before moving a piece is count. You should always make sure that when you move your pieces, everything you have is going to have at least as many defenders as attackers, and preferably more. So when he moves to this square d5, ArcherofChess with the black pieces moves to d5. Let's count the attackers. We've got 1, 2, 3 attackers. All right, but how many defenders does it have? I'll back up a second. We have 1, 2 defenders. Okay, so that's a free pawn. White has more attackers than defenders. White can capture and black can't recapture. So white captures with the pawn. E takes d5, and then we have the move knight d4, centralizing the knight, but unfortunately hanging the pawn. Okay, so interestingly, knight takes e5 is playable. This is fine. Then we get castle. The advantage black has, while black may be down a pawn, notice black has open lines for the bishops. There's an X-ray attack on the king. There is the queen can come in. The knight can come in, the knight can come in. So while black is down a pawn, look at all these arrows I just pointed at the king's side. I like drawing with arrows. So we've got a lot of potential for black for some attack. Okay, so we have a3 here. a3, the only thing I can think of is perhaps DanielPHCC is worried about the bishop sliding over. That's not really a threat, though. The bishop's doing great on c4. If anything, the bishop might slide back to d6 and get another attacker over here on the h2 pawn. So I think this this kind of wastes a turn But a bigger problem is the fact that this knight over on e5 is what I call loose. A loose piece, it's not just me that calls it, a lot of people call it this. A loose piece is a piece that has the same number of attackers and defenders, and in this case it is 0. Loose pieces are weaknesses. They are opportunities for your opponent to make a threat in one move. And so that's exactly what happened. We have rook to e8. And the best thing to do is to just move this knight back. Go ahead and bring it back home to f3. But instead, DanielPHCC walks into a pin. This knight is now pinned. All you got to do is bring some extra attackers on the knight. Anything like that. Adding more attackers on that knight, well, probably not that last one. But bringing the queen or the bishop to d6 is going to make it very difficult to hang on to that knight. And so that is what Archer of Chess does. Archer plays queen to d6. Now the knight comes back, and this is okay. I would always be worried about putting my knight right here on d3 when I haven't moved my d2 pawn or my b2 pawn, because where's the bishop going to go, right? So it's kind of stuck. All right, so here's the point of all this. We got rook takes e1, queen takes e1. The whole reason for all this whole setup, at least I thought, was to force that exchange and then fork the pawn on c2. That's not what black does, though. Black instead plays bishop to f5. You know, it's not a bad move. Black is still clearly winning, and even puts another x-ray attack onto that c-pawn. But it just, I don't know, it seemed like the best thing to do would be to go ahead and take the c-pawn, and maybe you'd end up with a bunch of trades. So white responds, instead of doing anything about the fact that they have a fork. I don't know if y'all can hear that helicopter flying by. We'll see if it'll quiet down. Plays b4, trying to create some counterattacks on the bishop. The problem is there's just too much pointed at the king right now. The king is in danger, and the best thing black can do is ignore this threat and just start throwing pieces at the king. So even a move like knight to g, right here. A move like knight to g4 threatens mate in one move. Not one move, in two moves. It would be let me show you. Let's say they take the pawn, then you have check, and then mate, right? So you can't ignore all the attackers that black has over there. Instead, black did just step the bishop back, so missed out on the mate opportunity. I would have definitely let my bishop hang for an opportunity for mate. Okay, so the next thing is this knight to b5. I'm guessing DanielPHCC is just still trying to get attacks on the queen, but that just hangs the knight. I mean, I guess it's a trade, but still, it's no good. Well, if black takes the knight, bishop takes the knight, queen takes the pawn, it's a free pawn, or just, again, continuing on with the mate threat. So either of those look good. Instead, black just scoots the queen back, allowing for that potential trade to happen on d4. Okay, so next we have a4. And I'm just wondering, does anybody even see that knight sitting there? It's been hanging out. Nobody's traded it off. Nobody's taken it. It's just sitting there deep. If I were white, I would want to get rid of that deep knight. I would definitely would have taken it by now. Now we finally get knight c2, and that's the problem, is that knight's been threatening this fork for how many turns? It finally gets the fork in. The queen moves over to d1, and we see the rook on a1 disappear. Then we have knight to e5, again attacking the queen. The queen slides over to e7, and then bishop b2, going ahead and saying, all right, I'm ready to take this knight off the board. The queen takes the free pawn, and there was actually a really cool trap here with the move, instead of taking the free pawn right away, playing the move a6. Okay, check this out. Where does this knight go? It can't go here, obviously. It can't go here. If it goes here, then you win the other knight. And if it goes here, it's just out of the game. Let's show that. If it goes here, not only is it out of the game, but the queen comes over, attacking the knight again. So that bishop still can't take the knight, and the queen can't take it without the other queen snacking on the pawn. So, okay, let's see what happens instead. The queen just takes the b4 pawn right away, and then queen takes a1. The problem with queen takes a1 is it does hang the pawn on d2. All right, so then we have the move a5. Now, apparently, DanielPHCC did not see that we have mate coming up really fast. Watch what happens if queen takes f2, king slides over, and then you play bishop to e4. Do you know how hard it is to stop checkmate on this square? Because the queen can't come over here to g1, because then you just take it with mate. The queen can go to f1, trade queens, but then this pawn falls. There's no real good way to handle that. Instead, however, black plays knight g4, and that was not the right move. Maybe I'm trying to figure out what black was thinking here, Archer of Chess. I had just done a video on smother mate, and so I'm wondering if they're thinking, oh, okay, if I move here, the queen takes, and, you know, let's make just some other random move, you know, take here. Isn't that smother mate? No, it's not. Right, because the queen, you can't smother mate if the queen captures the queen. Okay, so you do have to have the king blocked in by a rook if you're going to use the knight to deliver smother mate. Okay, so A takes b6. Now this is really important. Move order matters. There are actually two captures that white can make. A can capture the bishop, or A can capture the knight. Which one creates the bigger threats? Hopefully you see that taking the knight creates the bigger threat because it threatens the queen right away, right? And so if you play this sequence, knight takes knight, bishop takes knight, and then pawn takes bishop, you're doing pretty good. The game's pretty even. But by taking the bishop first, then you allow this knight to take the knight, and then the pawn recaptures. But black also suffered the same move order slip up and took with the c pawn instead of taking the knight with the knight first. The next we have is bishop to d4, and then queen to h4. Queen to h4 is okay. Queen to f4 is better. Why is queen to f4 better? If we have something like this, we're still about the same, right? But if we, let's say, have some random move like this, sorry, not that one. If we have a move like this, there's so many threats. Sorry, not there. Yeah, there's so many threats of mate that you're gonna have a hard time finding your way out. Whereas the queen to h4, there's a couple ways to get out of that. h3 was not the correct way, but knight takes g4 would have solved the problems. Instead, we have h3. Now we have the knights traded, and notice that hangs the bishop. All right, so black is still in this game. The knight comes to attack the queen, but again, we have the pawn is hanging, but there's really no good option for white. You know, the knight is hanging, the pawn is hanging. You can't bring the knight to the c3 square because it would disconnect the bishop from the queen, and so there's really nothing easy for white to do. So white decides to play knight d6. The pawn falls, and then white takes the bishop. Okay, so at this point, black just needs to make sure he wins one of these pieces. Well, that should be easy with sliding the rook over to e5. Now there's no way to stop black from taking the bishop. I said e5, sorry, the rook to e8. The knight can, attack the queen, but it's not going to really help because the queen, then you get into this rook versus knight game. Alternatively, instead of playing the knight over, you can go ahead and take the pawn and drop the knight. So there's no good options for white. But that's not the move that black played. Black did not play rook e8. Instead, black played rook d8. Now, I want you all to pause your video and find the winning move for white right here. White can turn this game around in one move. Hopefully, you've been doing your chess puzzles and you'll see this really, really fast. DanielPHCC is one of my top puzzle workers, and so I am not surprised he found the solution to this. So, did you find it? Did you pause your video and find it? This is important. Always watch for forks. Knight to e7 check, forking the king and the queen falls. And now it's a queen and a bishop versus a rook. This is just easy cleanup at this point. It starts with an extra check. ArcherofChess moves the king away. DanielPHCC grabs the pawn after rook to a5. Notice this is such a solid move. Instead of what I'll see a lot of kids do is I'll see them go ahead and just put in a check. There's no point in that. That does not do any good. But instead plays queen to d6. So the rook cannot easily attack the queen any longer. If the rook puts the king in check, the king just steps up. And now it's threatening mate very fast. So this is such a good move and such a quiet move. It's not something I usually see kids catch very quickly, especially in the end game when they're not really thinking about finding the fastest mate. They just, oh, I'm winning, I'll just play some moves. So we got f5, the bishop to f8, again threatening queen to e7 with mate. The king steps up to f7, which ends up losing pretty quickly. We got queen e7, king g6, queen g7, king h5, and then we have checkmate, queen h6. So this game was interesting because Archer of Chess had the advantage the entire game. The entire game. The evaluation had Archer of Chess up between like 5 and 11, like all game long. But Archer of Chess kept missing tactics. Missed the fork of the queen and the rook until several moves later. Missed how to get the checkmate threats set up. And so by never capitalizing on this advantage, he eventually made a mistake, allowed his own pieces to get forked, and DanielPHCC did not miss it at all. And so that's why it's so important to work your puzzles. Working puzzles are going to train you to not miss those opportunities and not give those opportunities to your opponent. So you'll think, fork, fork, fork. Don't let my pieces get forked. Look for ways to fork. Those sorts of things. So be sure to work your puzzles. Great job, DanielPHCC and Archer of Chess on finishing first and second. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time.